This is the first in a series of Halloween-related videos that will be coming out between now and Halloween. If you have an original Halloween or ghost story, please email it to the address in the description if you'd like it narrated. Enjoy. Number 1. The Trick-or-Treater. One of the tricky things about Halloween is that since the holiday is based around costumes and trying to scare people, you can never be 100% sure when someone is trying to play a prank on you, or if they are seriously trying to hurt you. And that was the main issue that I had when this story happened to me. I was in my mid-20s when this happened. I lived alone and actually had my own house. I had a good job and could afford pretty much anything I wanted. I also really loved Halloween, and growing up and trick-or-treating, I always wanted to be the popular house. When I was young, the popular house was always one of the ones that had a lot of Halloween decorations in the yard and gave out mini Snickers bars. So I really did my yard up with all sorts of great Halloween props, and I won up the mini candy bars. Both the backyard and the front yard were made into a full prop-filled haunted house. And I bought full-sized candy bars. Over a few years, my yard got more and more popular, and I always looked forward to Halloween each year. I had been doing these things for about 5 years when I had a really bad experience. For a while, it just seemed like any normal trick-or-treat night. I had a lot of kids coming by, checking out the decorations, and then coming to the house and knocking on the door. I chose to keep at the door rather than sit on the porch, so the kids could see my costume only after I opened the door. Now, with the amount of children we had in the neighborhood, I can't guarantee when I first noticed the figure on the sidewalk. I mean, it was very crowded on the street, and there's no way just one costume would have stood out the first or second time that I had seen it. However, eventually, I noticed that there was a teenager, or someone, who had been standing on the same spot at the foot of my driveway. He was wearing a Leatherface costume, and even had a really realistic-looking chainsaw. I couldn't tell if the saw was chained or not, but I figured it was just a prop. I think I must have seen him a few times standing there, or when I really noticed him, I wouldn't have found it to be unusual. However, after I noticed him, each time I got a knock at the door, I would go out and see him standing at the foot of my driveway in the same place. He was looking at my house, which wasn't too weird because that was the reason my house was decorated. It was to be looked at. But every time that I opened the door, he was there. He was on the sidewalk and looking at my house. I don't think it should surprise anyone that I kept looking over in that direction each time I opened the door. He had shown up at least a half hour after it had gotten fully dark outside, and I'm not going to exaggerate. He did move around just a little bit, but it was never past the area of the front walk in front of my house. As anyone else would likely have to agree, I became very preoccupied by him, and I became a little scared because it was just so creepy. Eventually, trick-or-treating calmed down. Toward the end of the night, when I opened the door, I finally did not see the Leatherface standing outside. And then a few more times, in the last trick-or-treaters, I still did not see him. I eventually convinced myself that it was just a teenager trying to scare me, and honestly, I found that to be reasonable. I mean, it was Halloween, and, a good scare on Halloween is really worth a lot. I actually even appreciated it after a bit of time. I let it drift from my mind for the rest of the time that I was up that night. A couple hours passed without anything happening, and when I was finally ready to go to bed, I had completely forgotten about the trick-or-treater. I fell asleep with no problem. I got up a while later and had to go to the bathroom and get myself a glass of water. My kitchen is right at the back of the house. After I'd gone to the bathroom, I went into the kitchen. I was drinking some water. I had not yet turned off the lights on some of the props in the backyard. I decided I should go out and unplug them before going back to bed. so I turned on the back porch light and went out there. It was while I was looking around the backyard and turning things off that something caught my eye. Standing in the side yard was a guy dressed as Leatherface, and he was watching me. I, of course, jumped out of my skin, and he noticed that I noticed him. He then took the chainsaw and revved it up, hitting the throttle almost immediately. I only stood there for a moment before I jumped and ran off towards my porch. He was closer to the porch than I had been, so I was really sure he'd be right on my heels. I was sure he would get a hold of me before I got safely in the door. But I was wrong. I was able to get into the house and lock the door. Looking in the backyard, he was there. He hit the throttle again. Then he walked into the side yard. I called the police and they came out. He was gone by then, though. They figured, just like I still figured, that it was nothing but a Halloween prank. I had appreciated it before he showed up in my backyard in the middle of the night. But after that, it was just cruel and freaky. Number 2. The Tomb. I grew out of trick-or-treating pretty early on. Well, I guess I can't say I really grew out of it. I probably would have done it for a few more years if I hadn't fallen in with the group of friends that I had. They all thought they were too cool to dress up and go looking for candy, so I had to pretend like I felt that way too. So I stopped going out around 12 years old. Instead, we tended to try and do other things on Halloween. That involved anything from sneaking into some abandoned building, playing pranks on other people, and things like that. Yeah, we did a bit of stupid stuff too, and nearly got arrested on more than one occasion. But those occasions did not only happen on Halloween. It was when I was 16 years old that I finally began to get some sort of idea of what sort of trouble hanging out with that group of friends could cause me. There is a graveyard in our area that is known as a haunted graveyard. It has such a reputation that it gets broken into around Halloween often. It has a really formidable fence with sharp edges atop the posts. It was always locked up at night. Well, my friends had the idea to go ahead and break into the cemetery that Halloween. My friend Carl had heard that there were a couple posts in the back of the cemetery that were broken and could be removed, allowing entry. Apparently, he had checked it out beforehand and knew exactly where they were. He decided the four of us needed to break into the cemetery and go on a little bit of a ghost hunt. So we went to the cemetery. It did take us a little while to find the broken bars so we could get in. It was actually a really tight fit, but all four of us were able to make our way through the opening and into the graveyard. We set the bars on the ground so we would know where they are on the way out. We brought a flashlight, but decided not to use it. We had been out in the dark for quite a while, and we were beginning to get very used to the ambient light. We also didn't want to advertise the fact that we were there, in case there were other people who were hanging out in the graveyard. We figured if we came across anyone, we might want to scare them, and if other people were walking around, they might decide to do that to us too. Anyway, we really didn't come across anyone. For a while we were bored. However, at one point, one of my friends found that there was a tomb with a broken door. He thought it would be cool if we went in and hung out. We managed to pull the door open all the way, and we went inside. I have to admit, my heart was beating really hard. I mean, I didn't think that there was anything like a ghost or anything in there. But I guess having a certain amount of respect for the dead is something that is ingrained in you from when you're very young, and I felt definitely like we were violating that standard. We got into the tomb, and were shocked at what we saw. I mean, yeah, there were obviously caskets in the tomb, but upon entering, we saw that we weren't the only ones who must have noticed that the door to the tomb was broken, and whoever had found the tomb before us were obviously a lot more dangerous than we were. There were guns lined up and down the far wall of the tomb. There were more guns laying on top of the caskets. I had never seen that many guns in anything other than a gun store. It was scary. I wanted to turn and leave, but I couldn't just force myself to move. Carl, on the other hand, was curious, and he wanted to see if there was anything else inside the caskets. He, despite us asking him not to, went over and opened one of the caskets. After a tense moment, Carl quickly put down the lid of the coffin. He turned towards us, the color completely drained from his face. He immediately began rushing for the door of the tomb. One of our other friends began to walk towards the coffin, and Carl said, "No, let's just get the hell out of here now." His voice was both urgent and scared, and we didn't question it. All the way back to the opening of the fence, the three of us tried to get Carl to tell us what he had seen in the coffin. He wouldn't answer us, though. He remained quiet throughout the entire hurried walk back to the opening in the fence, and he was the first one to go through the hole, and he kept walking while the rest of us made our way through. Once we all got through, we had to rush in order to catch back up with him. No matter how hard we tried, we couldn't get Carl to tell us what he had seen in that casket. I mean, it was a casket, so at the very least, it was expected to have a corpse in it. But obviously, Carl saw something in it that was obviously so much worse than a corpse that it freaked him out to the point where he refused to talk about it and has never revealed it to me. The pure fear that I had seen on his face convinced me to never even consider going back to that tomb. I'm not sure if any of my other friends had gone back either, but if they did, they never mentioned it to me. We still hung out with each other through high school, but I haven't seen any of those guys since. I do often wonder if Carl would be willing to reveal what he had seen, now that so much time has actually passed. Number 3. The Bully. I was a bit of a bookworm growing up, and I was also a short and skinny kid as well. As such, I spent a lot of time by myself. One of the reasons was that I didn't get along with a lot of the other kids. Many of them bullied me, but I really didn't let it get to me. I didn't acknowledge the kids who teased me, and I never engaged in fights with them. I truly didn't care what they thought about me, and they never got a rise out of me. I often think that this fact made them hate me even more. And bullies love to get a reaction from the ones they pick on. I just didn't let them really get to me, and it made things bad. There was a group of guys, 4 of them to be exact, who really gave me a hard time when I was in middle school. I think they were also the people who got the angriest at me for not giving them any satisfaction from tormenting me. I didn't realize how sociopathic they were really, though, until one Halloween. We had school that day, and I remained at school after the day was over. I was in the library doing some reading, and I let the night get away from me. Since it was late October, it of course got late very fast, and dark very early. When the librarian came and let me know that the library was closing down, the school building being locked up, I was surprised at how much time I had spent there. I lived quite a bit away from the school. However, our school didn't have much of a bus system, so I had to walk, and I set off on my way home. The streets were remarkably empty. Our town had already had trick-or-treating over the weekend, but I still expected to see people out celebrating Halloween, though. And there wasn't anyone. It was about halfway home when I was walking by a house. After I had walked by, I heard a door open and slam shut. I turned around, as anyone would when they hear a noise break the quiet like that, and I was scared to see those 4 bullies chasing me down. I tried to run, but it was no good. They had gotten the jump on me, and I was not that much of a runner. I got tackled down to the ground roughly. The guys then dragged me up and then across the yard back to their house. I was terrified, not knowing what they were going to do to me. They took me into the house and slammed the door. Once inside, one of the guys grabbed some rope, and he tied both my hands behind my back and my ankles and then my knees together. I was roughly thrown on the floor. All 4 guys then left the room, and although I could hear them talking, I couldn't make out what they were talking about. When they came back into the room, they all had big, shit-eating grins on their faces. I noticed why. One of them had one of those electric knives that people sometimes use to carve a turkey at Thanksgiving, and he turned it on. I began struggling, trying to do anything to get away. This just made them laugh even more, and then I began telling them if they hurt me, they'd end up getting expelled or going to jail. The response from one of them gave me a chill. That's if the police are able to find the pieces that are left over from you. Two of the guys then grabbed me and propped me up against the wall. The boy with the knife asked his buddies what part of me they should cut off first. One of them answered, his tongue, making all the other guys laugh. After the tongue, let's take off his dick, one of the others suggested. I was completely freaked. One of the guys grabbed the sides of my cheeks and forced my tongue out of my mouth. The one guy slowly came closer and closer to me with the knife, him laughing and me trying to scream. The knife actually got less than an inch away from the tongue, and right when I thought he was going to cut me, I felt him kick me right in the crotch instead. The one guy let go of my mouth, and all four guys laughed at me. Then they punched me a few times more before grabbing me, taking me out to the porch, cutting the ropes, and then forcing me to fall hard into the yard. Then they went into their house laughing. When I could, I got up and went home. I cried most of the way, I won't lie. When he was coming at me with that knife, I honestly believed he was going to do it. When I got home, I got cleaned up and went and lay down in bed. I didn't tell anyone about what happened, mostly because I was really embarrassed about it. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. I hope everyone has been doing well. I've had one of those Murphy's Law sort of weeks this week. I do want to let you know about something I told my Twitter followers about. I'm going to be doing some shorts this month called Horror Cliché Theater. They are going to just really be short videos that are just stills out of comic books, but each one will feature a horror cliché in it that goes different than usual. It's not supposed to be serious, and it won't take any time away from true stories, but I do hope you enjoy them. And if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. Comment on the video and share it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter using the links in the description. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell if you'd like to be notified of all future videos. My email is in the description, so if you have an original story that you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please send it there. In the meantime, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.